This podcast episode contains discussions of sensitive and potentially distressing topics, including child sexual abuse, suicide, and violence. Listener discretion is strongly advised. If you or someone you know is struggling, please seek support from a trusted professional or contact local mental health resources.
Welcome to The Human Experience, a podcast about the stories we live out every day and the importance of championing the vulnerability and courage of the storyteller. I'm your host, Jennifer Peterkin, and it was through my own lived story of experiencing domestic violence that this podcast was created. By traveling the globe and interviewing each guest in person, I am convinced now more than ever that stories have the power to change the world. You can join our community of storytellers by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, signing up for my newsletter, following me on Instagram, and more. Thank you for being here. In a world full of noise, to listen with intention is an act of resistance.
Michael, thank you so much for having this sit down with me. It's so great to meet you in person. I know we've communicated over email a couple of times, but I'm so excited to hear your story. I know you do a lot of speaking, so I'm sure that you've told this story a lot, but I'm really excited to hear about who you are, where you come from, and how that has shaped you into who you are today.
Absolutely. Well, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here, to be on your podcast. It means a lot for me to share my story and share my life with your audience. I think that's something that I had to learn over the past 20-some years of how much my story could be an impact and change someone's life. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So we're in Florida right now, in the West Palm Beach area of Florida. Is this where you're from originally?
So I was originally born in Jamaica back in 1981, February 5th, Aquarius baby. But then at the age of 7, my mom and dad made a tough choice in regards to us making some changes, some sacrifices, and we eventually went to Miami, Florida. But when you talk about Miami, Florida, we're not talking about like your South Beach or any of the glamorous things that you might see on TV. We actually moved to Overtown, Miami, Florida, which is like the projects of the projects and the ghetto of the ghettos down in South Florida back in 1988. Yeah.
88, you said?
Yep.
Okay. And that's where you spent the majority of your childhood?
Yeah, so initially when we got there, we lived in Overtown for a little bit, and then was living with my aunts. So I was not living with my mom and dad. They actually went to New York City to go work some odd end jobs just to try to make enough money for our family to, create some things for us. We're immigrants, and that's probably like the immigrant transition most people do. So we lived with my aunt and my uncle and my grandma at that time from another marriage where that came from. And inside of this house was 7 kids. Inside of one bedroom, you have 4 kids sleeping on the floor and the rest is on bunk beds. And shortly after that, my mom and dad transitioned to Miami. And when they transitioned to Miami, we moved around a good bit. So we moved from Overtown to Little Haiti, from Little Haiti to Opelika, from Opelika to Carroll City. And eventually after Carroll City, that's when I went out on my own and joined the military and started serving from there.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you highlighted the immigrant story of kind of doing what you have to do to make it work, to make ends meet. I think it's something that a lot of Americans that don't have that background don't understand, but it's not a story that's untold, or it's not a unique story in that there are a lot of people that have to do that have to make those choices every day. Can you talk about a little bit about like having the extended family and how important it is to have that like larger community in that sense?
Sure enough. So it is a hard path for most people that come that route. I remember when I was in boot camp and I was there for like the first month and I was thinking of like quitting and giving up. I was like, this is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And it was a challenge. And I wrote a letter to my mom and I was just complaining, telling her like, what the hell did I just do? This is one of the worst decisions I've ever made in my life. And she wrote me a letter back and it really put things in perspective. And inside of that letter, she tells me a whole bunch of things in regards to just like, you have everything inside of you to get through this circumstance, through this situation. And what she also went into detail was about my grandfather coming to Jamaica, and he came from Cuba. and him and his family came from Cuba on a boat. And that really gave me perspective in regards to the sacrifice that him and his family had to go through. And when she also go into more details, so at the age of 5 years old, we're there and it's raining and it's downpouring, and we're in a one-story house. And the houses in Jamaica are made out of bricks, but also the roofs are made out of zinc. So it's not really well-structured homes. So we're very seasonal when it comes to the rains and the hurricanes in Jamaica. And the house that we lived in had a thing behind it called a gully. We'll call that a canal now, that runs into a river. And we had a very heavy downpour. And during that heavy downpour, it rained and rained and rained, and the water system got blocked up. And then one morning we wake up and we're seeing everything inside of our living room and our bedroom floating. And my mom and dad has to get the ladder, and now we're sitting on the rooftop of our house. And you could think about how scared we are when we can't swim and there's nobody else around to save us. And I see my mom and dad go through this, lose every single thing that they've worked their whole life for. You know, at this particular time, you know, we're not thinking about we're having saves or saving, putting your documents in like Google Drives and all of these different things.
Sure.
So they lost everything. And that was one of the first times I've seen like when adversity struck us, and to see how your parents respond. And then 2 years later after that, we get Hurricane Gilbert. Category 5 hurricane, killed over 300 people. And this is when my mom and dad say, you know what, we can't keep going through this over and over. And they made that sacrifice. And I think a lot of immigrant families make that sacrifice. The sacrifice that they made in regards to a change in the transition was they went to New York City. And they went to go work these odd end jobs. My mom was a postal clerk, doing a good job, making money and things like that. And my dad, he had a minibus, they called it back then, kind of now like your Ubers and your taxis. But he was running it from like a business standpoint, where he had like 3 different vehicles, 3 different drivers, and they're going out throughout the country and making money for the company that particular way. But they gave all that up to come to America and just start something brand new that they have no experience doing. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even know what they did when they were in New York. So we come to America and we're there living with my aunt. And I would like to say that it was the greatest experience of my life, but honestly, it wasn't. The first night that I get there and we're there in the bedroom, my 13-year-old female cousin tries to get on top of me and take my innocence away from me.
Jeez.
And that shocked me. And at 7 years old, when you're used to playing with G.I. Joes and all of these different things, you know, something like that rocked you. And that really messed me up for a while. Shortly after that, my mom and dad did come to Miami and they grabbed us. But that was not something that I ever shared or told anyone, especially when you're a guest in someone's house and you're supposed to be your family members, and a whole bunch of things could transpire from that. So at a young age, you know, I didn't really know how to deal with that or even express that or talk about that, especially trying to be vulnerable and transparent as I am now today with you. To follow up on that, though, mom and dad did come, and then we decided to move to Little Haiti. And living in Little Haiti, you know, I'm Jamaican, so the language we speak is in patois. So if you don't understand Jamaican language, the kids them didn't understand how I spoke. So that came with a lot of the bullying, you name it. And we were very poor. So I used to wear like the colors of clothes that didn't match. I remember one time, I talk to my mom about this all the time, but we were so poor, she like sent me to school in some like purple tights. And I was a chubby kid. Yo, you talk about kids calling you Barney, man. It was wild. But anyhow, that came with a lot of like fighting and just a whole bunch of stuff. And, you know, it was part of growing up and trying to understand like the environment that you're growing up in. And if that's all you see around you, you could actually just think that you're trapped inside of this. And it was not until like I joined the military and I got a chance to see the world and see all the things that you could actually be exposed to, where you could actually have a change in your life, changing your perspective. But eventually after that, things got a little bit better, I would say. I joined the Boy Scouts. I did have a bad experience in the Boy Scouts. Right after that, you know, I went to a trip to Washington, D.C., and I'm there at the hotel on the last day. We got the chance to see all of the monuments. We're getting ready to come back home. And we split up in our hotel rooms as 12 boys, and half of the boys go to one room and the other half go to the other room. And I get out of the shower. I see 5 boys on the wall, and I was told to get on that wall too as well. And I experienced something that no kid should ever experience. And as a kid, when you're like searching for like your identity and you're trying to find a sense of community and so many other things, and for people to take advantage of you, to abuse you, really, really could shut you down. And obviously I left the Boy Scouts right after that. And I was always searching for community, searching for something, searching to be a part of something. And that's what led me to joining the Marine Corps, which I obviously changed my life and changed so many things in regards to who I am now today.
Wow. Wow. It's amazing that you tried so hard, that you invested as much as you did when you were a kid, that you were searching, right? And that you were looking for outlets and you tried to find them. And it's horrifying that those outlets were not necessarily good for you or didn't serve you in the correct way at all. How many siblings do you have?
So I have one younger brother. He's 2 years younger than me. And then I have a biological sister, which is 2 years older than me. I'm the middle child.
Okay.
And then I also have a sister that is adopted. And my mom and dad adopted her because her mom passed away at a young age as well.
So did your siblings kind of have similar, not the same experiences, but similar difficulties growing up just because of the area that you were growing up in and being an immigrant family?
Yeah, I think we struggled with some of those things, just in different ways. My sister was more so, she was into the Barbies, the modeling and things like that. And to adjust to what the American kids are dressing and wearing and stuff like that was a bit of a challenge. And then for my younger brother, he's seeing what his older brother is going through, and he's trying to navigate that too as well. And your older brother is still trying to struggle and try to figure things out. So it was a bit challenging for us. We went through that transition period. But I do believe that going through those experiences made us tougher and stronger and much more resilient nowadays. When I look at all the things that we've done and to see the accomplishments of my brother and my sister now today.
Yeah. You said that you didn't tell anybody about what happened with your cousin. Did you tell anybody about what happened at the Boy Scouts?
I did. I spoke to my mom about it. And the challenging things for immigrant families and families that are not aware of the legal systems, the processes, the financial means, and all of these different things could give you roadblocks or bottlenecks. And I think that's what's something that we ran up against, especially when, to be honest, we didn't have any visas, we didn't have green cards, those types of things, so you take the chances of someone that has much more money, much more powerful things to either send you back home to your country or those types of things. So sadly, some of these things, we just kind of like put those things to bed and we never bring it up. We never talk about it and never address it.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot for anybody, but especially to feel like you really can't afford to have a voice.
Right.
Must be excruciating at times. So you said that you were constantly seeking, constantly looking for something to be a part of, something bigger than yourself. So you joined the Marine Corps. Why the Marine Corps?
So, I was in high school playing football, and unfortunately I had a MCL, ACL tear and lost an opportunity to go to the University of Wisconsin. But it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. I never knew what would have happened at Wisconsin. And I tell you that because I met a really cool guy from Wisconsin that I served with in the Marine Corps. It turned out to be one of my best friends. But I was there coming out of the chow hall, and then this recruiter sees me, Staff Sergeant Noda, and I had like the sad puppy dog look, and he was like, "Hey, come here, man, let me talk to you." And he started talking to me about all of the great things in the Marine Corps, none of the bad stuff. None of the bad stuff.
Of course.
But then he tells me, you can still go to college, you can use your GI Bill, you get a chance to travel and see the world. You'll be around a band of brothers that's always going to protect you, have your back. You're going to be in a sense of community. You're going to know what it's like to grow up and become the man that you really, truly want to be. You'll get a chance to find yourself and a whole bunch of things that comes with serving in the Marine Corps when it comes to like your discipline, the honor, the courage, the commitment, the sacrifices that you're going to make. And it turned out to be just that. I told my mom and dad about it. Mom and dad was like, "Hell no, I don't want you to join the military."
Fair.
Their biggest fear was you going to war, honestly.
Yeah, of
and
course.
They're like, I don't want you to go to war. You're gonna die. And they thought the worst case scenario. But eventually, I told him, he convinced them. Shortly after that, I'm swearing in. I'm on the airplane. I get into Parris Island, South Carolina, go through that horrible HR process. If you ever know what it's like to join the Marine Corps, you fly in, you go to Parris Island, they put you on a bus. As soon as you go through the gate, they tell you to put your head down. A drill instructor gets on the bus. Get off of my bus, get off of my bus. Starts yelling at you, get on my yellow footprints. They're cutting your hair, they're taking off your clothes, putting on new clothes on you, call your mom and dad for 30 seconds, tell them you made it, goodbye. And now you're under the control of somebody else dictating your life for the next 3 months. And that's why I was saying that if you're not used to that, it could be a clear shock for you. And I was not used to that. As much as I played football and a coach was yelling at me, I still got to go home every single day. But now you're on your own and you're really trying to navigate and figure things out. And for the first month, the Marine Corps do intimidate you. They do get into your mind. They do get into your head with challenging you and seeing what you're made of. But when my mom wrote me that letter back, it really allowed me to dig deep and push and persevere. And if you have that desire to get through things, you will actually do it. And I did that. I graduated boot camp at the top of my class as one of the top squad leaders, had a chance to graduate meritoriously and do some great things. And with having that mindset, knowing that, there's so much inside of you, if you just actually put your mind to it, you could go out and do some great things. And I did that. That's why, I never regretted the decision that I made, because it helped instill so many things inside of me that I never knew that I had.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you join right out of high school?
17 years old.
Okay. Oh my. So your parents had to sign off for you to join.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you hear boot camp and you think rough, right? Mm-hmm. And then you hear Marine Corps boot camp and you think double rough.
Right.
So, I mean, they're kind of notorious for being the difficult, I guess, outside of the SEALs or something, the most difficult branch to get into or acclimate to. Looking back through that process, do you feel that, obviously there's value to it, but do you feel that there are certain people and personalities that thrive in it, and then there are certain people and personalities that maybe shouldn't be going through something like that?
So I do think that there's certain types of people it's made for and certain types of people it's not. What I will say is, if you actually do raise your hand and say you're going to go, the Marine Corps does a great job in shaping you, molding you, building you to get to your fullest capabilities of what they could get out of you and what you could actually get out of yourself too. And I say that as, I remember I used to judge a person. If you were big, muscular, strong, that you should accomplish and do great things. And if you were small, skinny, weaker, then you probably should be feeble and you probably can't do a lot of things. Boot camp in the Marine Corps changed that perspective, that mindset from jump. Okay. And I say that because I've seen some of the most shortest guys. They could be 5'2", 5'3", carrying guys 200 pounds and doing some jumping, crawling, swimming, shooting, doing all these things that you would never imagine or think that they could do. But somehow the Marine Corps makes you find this inside of you. And I've seen some of the biggest people that you could think are the strongest don't finish, don't complete. They complain. And I say that because it really comes down to what's inside of your mind and what's inside of your head to actually push you through and get you through some things. And that really shows through the test of times. Whoever is the most mentally strongest is the one that's always going to push through and get through things if they face any challenge or adversity.
Yeah. How long did you spend in the Marine Corps?
8 years.
8 years. Okay.
Yes.
So where did you go from? You were in Parris Island?
Yeah. So after Parris Island, I went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and I was assigned to second tracks where we were amphibious assault vehicle section leader. And after that, I went to Okinawa, Japan, right after 9/11. And after Okinawa, Japan, I was there for a year, assigned to 31st MEU, and then I went to Camp Pendleton, California. I think that was probably one of my coolest duty stations in California. It reminded me of South Florida too as well.
Okay.
And I was there in California, and that's when we got the word that we was going to get ready to go to Fallujah. So we took a tour to Fallujah for that 1 year time span, then came back from Fallujah. And I was in California for like close to another year, something close to that. And then when I was getting ready to re-enlist and transition again, I went to Quantico, where I became an instructor at the TBS school, teaching officers how to do what I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. I have some of this language, but it's been a long time since I've used it. What was your MOS?
My MOS was 1833, which is an amphibious assault vehicle section leader. Interestingly enough, the vehicles no longer exist as they've transitioned to newer vehicles, but the MOS still does. And what it is it's tanks, and you could put armor on the tanks too as well. And we carry the infantry. So within a platoon, there's 12 tanks. On each tank, you have someone that's in the turret, which would be me as a section leader. You have a driver that's driving, and then you would have an assistant down in the rear that's either helping you with, like, for example, I had Casanelli. He would help me like reload my weapons or pass me anything that I need. But he's also there to help with the communications and work with the infantry as they're down there too as well. And then we have an extra space for somebody to sit up top if there could be like a commander from the infantry. So if you think of that, it's 12 tanks. We're manning 3 people on each, and then we could carry the infantry on the inside that could hold somewhere between 15 to 20 people on the inside. So if we roll out, you could see like hundreds of guys coming out of 12 tanks, and that's how massive and explosive that could be. The weapon has a 50 cal and a Mark 19 weaponry, and we also could shoot phosphorus grenades too as well.
Okay. So you did one tour in Fallujah?
Yes.
Okay. Up until that point, being in Okinawa, it wasn't active combat, was it? Okay.
No. So it was my chance to do an overseas tour, and that's where I had a chance to go do it. Turned out to be one of the coolest experiences. I kind of wish I took more advantage of Japan, honestly, but I kind of became like a homebody, and when I got there, I really wanted to get like in like tip-top shape. So I got there probably about 210 pounds. And I saw the opportunity for me to start getting promoted and a whole bunch of things. So I started getting up like at 4 or 5 in the morning, just started running and doing push-ups. And, I did that. I accomplished that. I got meritoriously promoted all the way up to a corporal, and then got selected to be a sergeant, and got so many opportunities to surpass people that were my peers because I was just doing so much more than them. And that's the mindset I told you that I've like kept with me. If you go out and like put your mind to it, you could accomplish and do so many great things. And once I got there, I was just so into just being physically fit. And that's where I had a chance to learn about so in the Japanese culture, they're super big into like the saunas and the steam rooms. So I stayed a lot of my time in there, got a chance to go out into like Kintown and learn about everything in regards to the culture of the type of food that they're eating and stuff like that. So it turned out to be a great time. And also I had a chance to go to Tokyo and saw how beautiful it was and how colorful it was and how friendly the people are and embracing you. And I was like, man, I would love to come back here. As like I told my family, like that's one place I would actually want to go back to and see it because it's so nice, it's so beautiful. And on top of that, our unit was very great in regards to building camaraderie, knowing that you're in a new place, in a new country. So they kind of made it like a home away from home. Sure. So we did lots of activities together. And that's something I actually like do with companies now. Like when you're working with your teams and your staff and you're trying to build camaraderie, whether it's in HR or whatever you're doing, if you could like build some of these small unit types of activities and things like that, it does immense amount of things inside of your company and your organization. But we did that, and we went on things like the banana boat rides. We did lots of cool things. We went out to that's where I first learned how to eat like sushi, and I tried sake, or the sake with the snake in it, and all that different type of stuff. But it was cool though. But it was a good experience.
That's good. I take advantage of it while you can, right? I think that's one of the coolest things about serving overseas is if you're in a place like that where it's not, active combat zone, that you and maybe in active combat zone too, I don't actually know, but you have the opportunity to kind of see the culture and experience it in a way that you wouldn't necessarily, even if you were a tourist, right? Just a regular tourist. So how long were you in Japan?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. Yeah. And then you came back, you said you went to California after that?
Yeah. So I got to California and touched down in Los Angeles and took a taxi all the way to Oceanside. And that was like a $90 bill.
And this is back in the early 2000s, right?
Early 2000s. Yeah, man. Actually, you know what? I didn't actually go to the base that day. I actually stayed at a Super 8. I don't know. I'm not sure if they exist anymore. But I stayed at a Super 8 motel. And then I think the next day I took a taxi to the base.
Okay. Okay. You had to have your one last night of freedom before being on base. How was that for you? How did you like that, living on base?
Living on base was not bad. You know, as a sergeant, you kind of get to kind of like claim your space. So I had my own room, and at that time, I've accumulated so many things. Interesting enough, when I think about this, so I had a big compact computer. I didn't have a laptop. I don't think laptops existed back then, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
So I was traveling with a computer, and we had sea bags. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with what sea bags are. So those are like our suitcase. So I had like 2 of those with my uniform, all of the clothes that I bought in Japan, because you could buy clothes over there super, super cheap. And man, that's wild, but it was cool though. You know, once I got to California and had opportunity to stay in the barracks and be assigned to the unit that I was assigned to, it was pretty cool. To be honest with you, I've been coming out of Miami, Florida. I've never been exposed to different cultures, different communities, and things like that. So I'm from Jamaica, so we're Caribbean. I come to Miami and I'm in like the projects. So I'm more around African Americans, Black Americans. Then I get a chance to go to Little Haiti. So I'm around the Haitian community and the Haitian culture. Then I go to Opalaka. So I'm now in a mixture of Hispanics, of Americans, and different Colombian ethnicities. Then I joined the military, and now I'm around 60 different guys from all over the world. And to be honest, of our 60 people that's there, was only 4 Black people that's in our unit. So now you have to try navigate that and learn about different cultures in different places. And interesting enough, I met a kid that said he's never met a Black person before when I went to boot camp. So that was a pretty cool experience in regards to just like learning cultural things around each other. And for me, it really started helping me like get exposure to different things in regards to just being culturally aware of things that I've never been exposed to. I go to North Carolina, now I'm getting exposed to different languages and how people speak in the South. Because in Miami, it's different. It's a different language. Right?
It's not the South
It's
like
not the South.
the Carolina South.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I go to Japan, and now I have to learn a little bit of Japanese if I want to start communicating. So now I'm learning this language. Then I go to California. California speak a little bit different. They act a little bit different. So the exposure is so much more different, where I really, really loved it and embraced it. And I tell you that because when I tell you that I was one that was getting bullied for how I spoke and how I was different and how people picked on me. And for me to now travel the world and hear different languages and understand different things, I get it.
Yeah.
I totally get where other people are coming from. So that's why I never have that type of mindset of judging people or different types of things because of my life exposures and things that I've been through myself.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you grew up being bullied and then you joined this built-in brotherhood. And was it like that for you?
It was absolutely nothing like that. You know, what I was probably looking for in the Boy Scouts was absolutely not there. But in the Marine Corps, man, I'm friends now with some of the guys 20 years later. We just had a reunion in Texas with all the guys we went to Iraq with and served with. And we're in our own Facebook groups now. But the brotherhood is so tight, I would never trade that for anything.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad you had that experience, especially after having the experiences you did growing up.
Right.
Yeah. So you said Pendleton was your favorite. Why?
So I think it was the breakfast burritos.
I love that answer. Such a good answer.
I love the breakfast burrito. And I actually dated this young lady. She was from Oregon, and she took me in and just like showed me California. And that was one of the coolest experiences because I never really like dated like that. And then she just said like, here's this, here's Temecula, here's this, here's Carlsbad, here's Oceanside, this is San Diego. If you want to go to Mexico, you go here. But that was one of the coolest times I've had, and the people there was very nice. I never felt judged. I never felt treated a certain type of way. Everybody accepted me for who I was and made me like really embrace the community, embrace the whatever is going on there in the city. And the guys that I served with also made it really cool to be a part of the unit that I was in. And honestly, the unit that I was in, of all of us, there was only 3 or 4 African American, and you couldn't tell. Like, no one treated me a certain type of way or anything like that. Like, hey, come over to our house, come over to dinner, hang out with us, meet my wife, meet, those types of things. So it was really cool just to be there in California.
Yeah. Do you feel like the bond that's built in the military kind of transcends all other things or differences almost?
It does. It gave me the mindset, I think we always talking about like we don't see color, we just see green, right? And that's how we looked at things. So I've never having that mindset, knowing that this brotherhood is I have your six, I have your back, regardless, no matter what it is. It's I'm here for you and you're here for me. And I think being in Kuwait really bolstered that. And we left once we finished training, getting ready to go to Fallujah. We left from California to Seattle, from Seattle to Canada, from Canada to Germany, from Germany to Kuwait. And we're there in Kuwait for close to about a week and a half preparing to go into Fallujah. But every single person that I served with, we had over 2.5 weeks to bond. And it meant a lot for what we was about to go into and experience. And now I knew how you think, how you process. I knew everything about these guys. I also knew everything about their family, and they knew about my family too as well, which kind of gave another level of empathy, but made you want to care more about this person and make sure that they get back home to their families and their loved ones. For me, especially as someone that was in a leadership position, I knew how much that meant for me in regards to like the responsibility and how accountable I had to be for them too as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very concentrated experience, right? And so it's almost like a sink or swim moment, right? You either figure out how to be together and to be a team and a unit, or you're all kind of screwed. So why did it take so long to get there?
I'm going to say that's probably navigational reasons and probably some intelligence reason that I probably was not. I probably did not know why, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. That was the longest flights I've ever been on. One of our friends posted on social media a couple months back when we actually left. So we left around January, February-ish, and every place that we stopped, we got a chance to like go inside of like where the hangar bay is at, and they had posted the picture of us walking onto one of those airplanes, and it was like in the snow, and you could just see everyone's like face as in like we're locked in and focused. But it was frigid cold.
But not where you were going.
Shoot, Iraq was 120 degrees every single day.
Oh my gosh.
Every single day.
Oh my word. I
came back about 170 pounds. My friend made a video and he had posted it, and I looked at the picture and I was like, wow, I was so skinny. so skinny.
Yeah. So how long were you in Iraq?
So we deployed around January, February 2004, and we did not come back until right around Thanksgiving 2004. So give it 10 months, 11 months-ish, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously that's a very different experience than being in Japan or California. So, you're in the military, and so there's a part of you at least that understands that this is part of the deal. What are you thinking when you find out that you're going to be deployed there?
So that shock actually hit me way before that. You know, all these things, I'm a kind of person that like introspectively look at things. And when my mom and dad said, no, I don't want you to go to war, that has always stuck in my head to the day I could tell you the story now. And then when the recruiter picked me up and I tell mom and dad goodbye, I could kind of see it and kind of feel the magnitude of the weight of their son is about to go serve. And there's a potential of him going to war. 9/11 hits. And when 9/11 hits, I'm there in North Carolina. And we're just finished exercising that morning. And I get in my truck and I get a call. And my mom calls me and she's asking me, are you going to war? All of these things. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? And she tells me the terrorists just hit the Twin Towers. And shortly after that, we have our conversation. I get down to the ramp and we're watching TV. They're shutting down the base. Sirens are going off. And this is when that kicks in, where mom was like, oh, you're going to war and all these different things. So it kicked in years before, as in that was already in the back of my head that I could potentially go to war. And then shortly after that, President Bush declares this is the war on terrorism. And once that was in place, I just knew that it was just a matter of time whenever our unit was going to get called, because we were in the type of unit that goes to war and fight combat and go to combat. So, you know, I was in Japan. Nothing happened in regards to being there. But once I got to Camp Pendleton, we started training, kind of like led to the buildup. And then we went out to 29 Palms. And once we were there in 29 Palms, Captain Venning comes out and tells us, boys, it's our turn. So at that moment, you know, I think we knew it was coming. It just kind of like tightened things and made us much more focused, locked in, and much more prepared in regards to what we're about to do and go execute.
Yeah. This may be a really stupid question, but was it, overall, was it what you expected it to be?
You know, I don't know what it was going to be in regards to expectations. I'll say this. I think we had trained and prepared for every circumstance and every scenario. But I've never been to Kuwait. I've never been to Iraq. All we could do is recreate certain types of scenarios. So we've done all of the gas mask training. We've shot thousands of bullets. We've driven our tanks to maneuver in and out of things, how to repair if we was to get shot here, these types of things, how to do first aid, you name it, how to carry a person if this was to happen. You know, and then in addition to that, we went to the FBI. They had like an FBI setup training where you get to do like the like close quarters types of shooting, kicking indoors types of training. So we started doing those types of training too as well for scenario-based types of hostage situations. So we prepared for all of those things and ramping up for that. But once we got there, we didn't know what mission or assignments we were going to get sent to or do. And what we would say is that we were prepared to handle most things. We get there once we got to the FOB, and the first night that we get there, we're mustered around and we hear incoming. And now we're like scattering and trying to find cover. And obviously they saw all of these vehicles come into their city, and we find cover and we got mortared, and mortars started coming in day one. And this is when, for me and everybody else, I'm pretty sure would say like, this crap is real. And you could potentially lose your life here in any given moment. In preparation to that, you know, I don't know what's going to take place. So I honestly cut off a lot of things in my life. So like the girl that I was dating, I broke up with her, all these things, because I didn't want other things that was tied to whatever I was going on with. My car, I got rid of my car, everything. I told my mom and dad goodbye, you know, all of the things in regards to dying, like your will, your life insurance, you name it. I did all those things not knowing what was going to take place.
Yeah. It's a lot to process mentally. Just, we think about war or combat even, and I feel like for civilians. We think about it in the context of like that moment of combat. But there's a lot that comes before that, and obviously after as well. But there's a lot of stuff that you already had to mentally process before you even get to the point where you're stepping on that plane to leave. How was it saying goodbye to your family, knowing that it was something that your parents had struggled with you even doing in the first place?
It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. To tell your mom and dad goodbye and not knowing if you'll ever see them again was one of the toughest times I've ever experienced in my life. Now you're bringing that to my mind. It was one of the toughest times because, you know, this is the household that you grew up in. You're fussing, you're fighting, your birthdays, all of these different things. And, you know, tomorrow is not promised, but in wartime, it's a little bit much more serious and significant, knowing that death is imminent and it's a high probability that you could potentially lose your life.
Yeah.
Today or tomorrow or sometime while you're here. Knowing, because when you're there in Fallujah, you could be inside of the fob, but you could hear gunshots at night. You could hear rockets at night. It just may not come towards you, but you know that somebody's out there fighting, somebody's out there shooting. You could hear all those things every single night. Every single night. And having that going on, it was very, I would say, mentally grueling, knowing that you just told everyone goodbye and you never know if you could be next. I had some close calls. I'm pretty sure we'll get into that here, but it was one of the toughest times. You know, the first day that we got to Fallujah, one of the first signs, they even put a spotlight on it, and it's all over the fob, and it says complacency kills. And it never meant so much more to me than really understanding the true meaning of what that means. Of you could apply that concept in anything in life.
Yeah.
But complacency kills. So you always have to be prepared, keep your head on a swivel, whatever it is. If you're not prepared for something, you could easily die here in combat. You could die mentally, you could die physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of these different things if you get mentally complacent.
Yeah. I imagine it's a difficult balance to strike because on one hand, absolutely. And on the other hand, you have to be able to still like function too, right? So you have to be able to get sleep because without sleep, you're not able to do anything else. So you have to
I have gone close to like 4 days without sleep.
Oh, I believe that. I do believe that. But, you know, does it take a while to kind of strike that balance of I have to constantly be on, but at the same time, I have to live like this is my life now too. This isn't a one-time experience.
You know, when you asked me when I joined, you know, what did the Marine Corps teach me? One of the things that it taught me was how to quickly pivot, adapt. And I think, interestingly enough, something that I've applied in my life, and I would say it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, but it teaches how to compartmentalize things and how to like quickly deal with something and put it somewhere. Whatever happened, catch it and put it somewhere and just keep on moving on, as you cannot lose focus, because if you get distracted, it leads to bad things or adverse things to occur. So we quickly have to like pivot and deal with whatever's is coming and move on. We got shot at. Do you stay there and look at getting shot, or do you pivot and fire back? Do you load up ammunition? What are you going to do? How are you going to respond? And having that mindset of being able to just compartmentalize whatever's happened, pivot from there, and move on to the next thing of whatever needs to take place.
Yeah. I mean, it is a skill set, to be sure. But I appreciate that you acknowledge that there's a downside to it as well.
It is. Because I do that now. I sometimes my wife may say something. And I have to compartmentalize what's going on and like catch it and put it somewhere because I don't want to deal with it. So
skills training. training for life. Oh my goodness. So you're in Iraq. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis? You spent about 10 months there. You know, you get there and it's a little, I'm sure more than a little jarring, but you eventually move into life there.
Yeah, so once we got settled in, we created a routine of how we would operate in regards to our daily activities. And as amphibious assault vehicle section leaders, we're working on our vehicles and preparing them so they could be operable every single day, the day that we get the call. While we were there, we had opportunities to either do daily patrols or we'll go out and link up with other units and go out and support different missions. So some of the day-to-day things is we're getting up in the morning, we'll have a platoon gathering in regards to information, what we're going to be doing, what's taking place, what's coming down the pipeline. We'll do those types of things. From there on the base, there's actually dry cleaners that was on the base. There were a chow hall we could actually go and eat. And to help with camaraderie, they had places where you could go play spades, you could play volleyball. But next to these same places are bunkers, you know. Yeah. You could be having a good time. You could be playing volleyball. Next thing you hear a siren go off incoming, and you got to go find cover until like there's no more. So that was our daily in between when we're not outside doing something. And one of the coolest thing was the bond that we started creating and building. You eventually find like your group of who you're going to be around. And for me, it came with Salto, Brady, Perez, and the guys that I actually serve with now and are friends with now today, Marifian, Casanelli, Lowe, all of these guys. And whenever we went out on missions, things changed. And the first mission that we went out on, it's our section providing support to another unit and where they're sitting on the highway. And all of those things that I just shared with you is out of the window. Now all the training, all of our preparation is here now, and anything is possible. So now your weapons are fully loaded. Now your guns, your pistols, your hand weapons are fully loaded, ready to go. Now you're having binoculars and you're like surveillancing and looking. So as a keynote speaker and preparing, whenever I get off stage, it feels like I've worked an entire week just after delivering 1 hour speech. And being out there, you've prepared and your brain is like locked in, focus on like, if this happens, I got to do this. If this happens, I have to do that. So you're kind of like on edge, and ready to do something or prepared, and that's how you have to be. And as crazy as it is, you could be like that for 6 hours, 7 hours, and you still have to remain on 10, ready to go, even if nothing is happening. So your level of awareness is on a higher level, and that's how it was for us while we're there providing support. The first night we're there, nothing happens for close to 12 to 16 hours. 1 o'clock in the morning, RPG shoots over our head, lands behind me. I could feel the heat. I could feel the smoke of it just landing behind us. Another one shoots at us in the dark. And immediately, myself, my gunnery sergeant traversed our weapon, identified where it came from, and we leveled the entire building of where the RPG came from. But that's from the instinct of the preparedness, our skills, our in-syncness, all of those things to identify where this came from and got rid of the enemy right there on the spot. But nothing happened for all those hours. And all of a sudden, we did this in 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'll say that as in like, for 1 hour as a keynote, I just have to deliver for this 1 hour. But I could prepare hours that nobody sees, nobody knows, all of these different things. And that's what was going on. We've trained and prepared. No one knows how much we've trained and prepared. No one knows how long we were sitting on the highway preparing. Yeah. But all of a sudden, this happened, and we responded immediately. And from there, we got back to our fob. Me and my gunny spoke about it. And he was like, thank you for just having my back. Me telling him, thank you for having my back. And us training together, preparing together, we were so in sync and just knew exactly what to do if something like this was to happen to us. And from there, we went on several different missions, worked at Abu Ghraib prisons, and those things that I just told you happen on a periodic basis, different shootouts, different firefights, different VBIED car bombs going off. And it was not until I would share with you, those happened in between that. Thank God nothing happened to me or us at that particular time. Not until the last mission that we went on. And the last mission that we go on, we're supporting Phantom Fury. And in the middle of our tour there, my gunnery sergeant got injured, and he injured his back. And whenever I tell my leadership story, it always goes to this particular story, because at that time in Iraq, I was 21, 22 years old.
Wow.
And I'm a sergeant.
Yeah.
And I'm in charge of all of these people. And he gets injured. And inside of our platoon, at 22 years old, we have a gunnery sergeant that's been in the Marine Corps over 10, 12 years. We have lieutenants, we have other staff sergeants, and they have more experience than me, even been in combat before me. I have no combat experience. And he goes back to the United States. Now, I'm thinking that being as young as I am, one of those other guys would come and lead first section. So we're in 3 sections. So there's first section, second section, and third section. What if these guys from one of these sections would actually come and lead first section, knowing that I have no experience and I'm one of the youngest sergeants in our platoon? But no, they say, Sergeant Allison, you're going to lead first platoon. So you're the first one to see anything. You're the first one to encounter anything. You're the one that's going to be speaking with the lieutenants, the generals, the captains, the drones, the eye in the sky that's dropping bombs. You're going to be communicating with them. And this was a responsibility that was given to me at 22 years old.
Wow.
3-4 months in. So from there, we go on our last mission and we get linked up with the Iraqi soldiers and we get attacked. They took out one of our tracks. We immediately put it back together. We start speaking with the eye in the sky, identify where these guys are at. We flanked them and captured them. We go to their house of where they're at. They come out with their hands up and we capture them. And I'll be honest with you, we beat the hell out of them. We messed them up. They had nothing but RPGs, grenades, pistols, ready to take our lives. We turned them in. And we come back out the next day to link back up with our unit that was set up in a 360 perimeter. And while we're going around delivering ammunition, water, MREs, we're going around and we get to the last vehicle. And the last vehicle is a Hummer that has in the center one of the machine gun turrets. Hernandez is on there. The doctor is in the passenger side. My gunnery is sergeant. He's in the back smoking a cigarette. And my best friend Solto is in the driver's seat. We give them their supplies, and we pull off. 5 seconds from there, I hear boom! The blast tilts my track, slams me back down. I didn't even realize it, but the shrapnel from the car bomb gashed me above the eye, gashed my shoulder, knocks me down inside of the turret. Castanelli comes and grabs me. Sergeant Allison, Sergeant Allison! And he grabs me. And once I came back to, we get on the radio and Captain Venning is telling us we could get out and secure the area. And I get out and I see my gunnery sergeant blasted away from the Humvee and he has blood running out of his ears. The doctor, his legs is blown off. The weapon where Hernandez is at is around nothing but metal. It blows half of his face off. And my best friend Solto, kid from Wisconsin, Caribbean kid, I see his stomach on the inside of on the steering wheel of the vehicle. And this was a 500-pound VBIED car bomb that drove up on them and took them out. Eventually, we secured the area, and I had to put my best friend in the body bag. And this is when compartmentalizing things like kicks in. Like, do you sit here and mourn, or do you handle the situation because things are about to get bad? Shortly after that, we secured the area. They drop a bomb to blow up the area to get rid of everything that was there. And now we're trying to get out of there, navigate out of there. And we started getting attacked, and they started shooting at us, just trying to get out of this war zone. We eventually get back, and we go through debriefing of what took place. We go see some psychological doctors that was very short and brief of what took place. And we never went on another mission right after that. And what played in my mind over and over that I share with people now was I had a deep, deep, deep sense of guilt and grief on the inside. To be quite honest, when I was driving around, I've always asked myself why I didn't see that vehicle. I just drove past that area. I just drove past that. How on earth could I miss that? And I've always had like the sense of responsibility that was my fault, that I could have done something about that, and I didn't. And I transitioned out of the military after that, as it was probably one of the toughest times in my life.
Wow. That was your last mission? So you came home shortly after then?
Yeah, so we came home right around Thanksgiving. They had if you've seen on TV now, you kind of see like when you come through the airport, there's a whole bunch of people welcoming you home. There's a parade where you're marching back to where your unit is at, and then family members is there waiting to hug you, meet you, and greet you. And came back, and when I came back, I struggled. I struggled. I struggled when I came back and really couldn't adjust and get past some of the things that I was really bottling up on that inside.
Yeah. And that was the catalyst for you leaving.
Yeah, shortly after that, I knew that I did not want to go through that experience again, knowing what I was mentally carrying and dealing with, and not having an outlet of how to address that or deal with that in 2007.
Yeah.
So, I requested for orders to get transferred to do something else. And the opportunity came up where I got a chance to go to Quantico and become an instructor. And I went to Quantico to be an instructor. And interestingly enough, I became an instructor to teach people to do what I did in Iraq. So it played over and over again, becoming an instructor. So it never really left me.
Yeah.
While I was going through that.
Yeah. First of all, I can't imagine, but to come home after something like that to a quote unquote hero's welcome and to be feeling the way that you're feeling must have been extremely polarizing, right? You're seeing one thing and you're feeling completely opposite of that. It's
crazy when I use the phrase of the label. It's hard to see the label when you're like inside of the jar, and no one really knows what's going on the inside. They just see what's on the outside of the jar. It could say whatever it is. We have here the water bottle, Ala Wala, or body armor.
Yeah.
But nobody knows the things that's going on truly on the inside. And those things on the inside was crushing me and killing me. And you talk about the nightmares, you talk about the bad dreams, you talk about some of the sensory things that just heightens things. Like, for example, I remember when I got a job when I got out working on the railroad and just hearing like metal or trains. And I remember I was home one time and I heard the people cutting grass in our community, and hearing the grass, if you ever hear blades, it sounds like a whizzing noise, like propellers. And it always sounded like bullets whizzing by my ears while I'm sitting at home in a chair. And those are just like things that would bring back memories for me.
Yeah.
And it was not until I was working on a railroad and I'm a train master, and I get a call in the middle of the night from the dispatcher and says, "Hey, Mr. Allison, we have a suicide." And I show up and I see this body cut in half, and I have to do the reporting on it. I see the person, they're putting them in a body bag with the coroner. The news is there asking us to do reports. And the next morning, I had to report what took place. And I reported, and I broke down. And for over 10 years of my life, since I got out of the military, never addressed it, never talked about it, never told anybody like what took place. And that was when I decided to go check myself into the hospital and say, I need help.
Wow. 10 years later.
10 years later.
Because when you're teaching at Quantico, you're still...
In the moment.
What's that?
I'm still in the moment.
Yeah, but you're also still in the military.
Yes.
You're not a civilian at that point. So it was after teaching for a while, you got out. How did you start working on the railroad?
So when I got out, I honestly did not know what I wanted to do. I just knew that it was time for me to get out. And at the time, I was married, getting ready to get out to my first wife. And we're trying to like figure out where we're going to go, what we're going to do. And as I'm getting ready to get out, this guy comes up to me and says, hey, have you thought about working on the railroad? And I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. I don't have any grand plan of what I'm going to do. I thought I was going to go become a police officer. I thought at that particular time in 2007, the war was still going on. Mm-hmm. So there was all of these government contracting jobs, kind of like mercenary types of jobs. We could actually go back to Iraq, go back to Kuwait, Fallujah, Afghanistan, and actually like still fight the war, but still be a contractor. So those types of jobs was out there. So I thought I was going to go back and do something like that. But then she got pregnant, and I was like, I'm not going to leave my son. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, the police turned me down. I don't know because of me being a veteran or whatever, but I know that I was well qualified to become a police officer at that time. That being said, I didn't get it, and I was unemployed. And being unemployed, I'm trying to like figure things and navigate things. And then the railroad called, and they offered me the position of being a conductor. I worked being a conductor in Columbia, South Carolina, and I did it for 6 months. And I got laid off during that time. So then I become unemployed again for another 2 months. And I go back home to Miami, Florida, and I'm like, this cannot be my life. The only great thing I would say that came from that experience was I got laid off right around August, and my son was born August 18th. And so I was there for his birth. But immediately after that, I get a call from that same supervisor there in Columbia, South Carolina, and he says, hey, Michael, when you was here, you was a great employee. I saw you bust your butt. I saw you do some things that most people don't do. And I saw something inside of you. And I have a position in management in Atlanta, Georgia. Would you want it? And I was like, hell yeah. So shortly after that, I took it and told my family, hey guys, I got this job in Atlanta. And from there, I never looked back. And that's how I became a train master in Atlanta. I was responsible for over 207 miles of territory, all the way from Valdosta, Georgia to Atlanta, Georgia, and had over 250 employees reporting to me.
Wow.
This time at 28, 29 years old.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you really have experienced a lot of leadership opportunities, for better or worse, and whether you like it or not. So, yeah, wow. But going back to when you get out, did you have the language to kind of process what you had been through? Or was it something that like clearly you had or have, I'm not sure, PTSD? Were you ever at that point diagnosed? Did you have that language? Were you offered that, language?
So this is what I talk about now when I work with, I just spoke to Microsoft about this, but when I got out of the military and the war was still going on, there was a stigma around PTSD and mental health. Mm-hmm. And if you had any of those symptoms or anything that's tied to that, you were not going to get employed and you was not going to get a job. Knowing that, I said, this is something that I'm going to bottle in and keep on the inside. Mm. Hence why I went through that whole period of what happened with the suicide. So with that being said, I worked on a railroad and people knew that I served, people knew that I was in the military, but did they know what was going on, what I was dealing with when I went home? No, absolutely not. And I struggled with that in between that time frame. So honestly, in between that time frame, my professional life was going really good. At work, I could show up and do all of the great things that you're expecting me to do. But behind the scenes, I was struggling. So I went through a divorce with my wife because of lots of things that was tied to the stresses of dealing with some of the things that you're dealing with, and some of the things that she probably could not understand that I was going through at the time. And unfortunately, that same night that I got that divorce, I got a DUI. And I went to jail. I had to do community service, had to report to a probation officer, and I had to go through that process there. Thankfully, I never lost my job.
Yes.
But that was something that I was struggling with at that time. And what started creeping up, which led to me checking myself into the hospital, was the job is an on-the-call job. So on-the-call means you could work from 9 to 5, but if there's a derailment, a sick employee, whatever, at 10 o'clock, 2 in the morning, 4 o'clock, Mr. Allison, this is going on. You got to get out of bed and you got to go deal with that. So that was a part of the problem that was tied into my marriage with that, to be honest. But in regards to sleep, rest, all of these things that you need to like optimally perform was not there. And that became a struggle. So I found myself sometimes like drifting off the road, daydreaming, all of these different crazy things that was occurring to me. And I never knew why. I was just going through the motion because no one ever educated me about what PTSD is, what a traumatic brain injury is. And it was not until like these things started becoming much more clear where I was starting to understand, like when I started like working on myself and fixing myself and changing my life, where I actually started learning what was taking place. It was not until somewhere in between that time frame, honestly, I got into a fight. And I was in Miami and I went out on my brother's birthday. Some guy headbutt me and me and him got into a fight. And I went to jail from that fight. And I was actually still in the Marine Corps. And when I got back to Quantico, the military police says, "Hey, Sergeant Allison, we need to talk to you." And I thought I was in trouble. And actually, when they called me and they say, "Hey, we heard you got into a fight," and I tell them what happened, what took place. And what took place was this guy called me the N-word. And I always grew up where like you don't take like disrespect, and I didn't let him disrespect me. So me and him got into a fight, and from that, me and him ended up in jail and got a lawyer. Everything got dismissed, and all that stuff got taken away. So that's the short story to that story there. With that being said, when I got back to the base, they say, "Hey, since you got headbutt, we need to take you to the emergency room." And they took me to the emergency room, did a CAT scan on my brain. There was a hole in my brain that I never knew I had.
What?
Or anything. And I had to start getting treatment and a whole bunch of stuff. So it was lots of stuff, either from like, it could have been from the bomb, the car bomb. It could have been from a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
It could have been from the head, but it was not until that exposed that and showed that of some of the things that I was mentally dealing with, where maybe I was not even processing things clearly and stuff, but I never knew. And that actually brought light to that situation.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it depends on what pocket of the world you're in, because I feel like there's a lot of people that are talking about brain injuries and PTSD and how serious it is and what the effects are, how it can affect you later on in life. And then I still feel like in some places we're in like a prehistoric era where like we don't talk about that and that doesn't exist. And so it's really interesting the differences that still exist within the conversations around it. But when you talk about checking yourself into the hospital, do you feel like that was a rock bottom moment for you? Like, do you feel like you didn't have any other choice at that point?
At that point, I would say yes. I had nowhere to go. So you got to think about it. At this particular time in my life, I'm going through a divorce. I'm dealing with potential child custody battle with my ex-wife. I just had a DUI, and I'm in isolation pretty much because I'm living by myself. My family is back in Miami, and I don't know anybody where I'm living at. And I'm just going home to my own issues and my own problems. And going to get help at this hospital, I thought it was going to be a good thing. And it initially was okay. But what I've learned throughout this entire process of trying to find a counselor or someone to work with or psychiatrist is like, it has to be a good fit. Mm-hmm. And when I went to go meet this person and go through the initial phases, it just felt like I was speaking and talking to like a robot, and felt like somebody just is going through a checklist or just reading information that they're regurgitating from a book. And it was never a connection. And I immediately checked out. And I guess, as you could probably tell, I'm pretty real. I'm pretty honest. Mm-hmm. And if you can't communicate or connect with me on that particular level, then I'm probably going to check out. And I did check out because it just felt fake. Yeah. And I eventually just went back to my own means and just trying to figure things out. And from there, I don't think I went back to a counselor. Probably like another 5 years.
Okay. Wow. So how did you start to process things without, and just a disclaimer, I think personally therapy is great and it has its place. I also recognize talk therapy doesn't work for everybody. Mm-hmm. There are different modalities. So with that disclaimer laid out there, how did you start to process things for yourself after that?
So my transition changed a good bit. When I left the railroad from that suicide, this is what happened. I told my supervisor what was going on with me, and I needed to take off some time from work. I got put on FMLA, and shortly on being on FMLA, I got a letter in the mail of being let go from the company.
Wait, what?
I've never been in trouble. From the company standpoint, they've never written me up. I've gotten promoted. I started at that company at $46,000 all the way to $107,000 in a span of 5 years.
Wow.
Never been written up, never been in trouble. They don't even know anything about the DUI that I got. And it was not until I say, hey, I'm raising my hand. I have a mental health issue problem. I got an FMLA letter and I got a severance package. So I went back home to Miami, Florida, unemployed back again. In this moment,
the HR rep in me is cringing so hard right now, by the way. I have to tell you.
So that's how I left the railroad, not on my own terms.
Yeah.
I said, all right, well, this is what life is throwing at me, and I've been through a lot of stuff, so I know how to figure things out and what's going to take place after that. So I went back to Miami, and now I'm back to being a single dad, but now I'm in my son's life, and so it kind of works out. So I said, I did join the Marine Corps, and I did get this thing called a GI Bill. so I'm going to go back to school and just trying to navigate things. So I go back to school, and I get a bachelor's degree in information security. And then following that, I got a master's degree in business. And all of a sudden, the Department of Veterans Affairs offered this opportunity for veterans to become IT project managers in Washington, D.C. So I applied, and I got it. And I would go to Washington, D.C., and I become an IT project manager. And I'm there, and I get a chance to work with Colin Powell, General Shinseki. I get a chance to be on Capitol Hill, and my life is just changing, and it's like going crazy, crazy good. And it's going really well. And I'm there working, and I met this young lady in Georgia, and she decides to transition with me to Washington, D.C., and we're there now. And all of a sudden, we move in together, and she's starting to notice things like I'm jumping in my sleep. I'm having all of these things that I don't notice for myself. And she was like, hey, I think you need some help. I think something is going on. You're talking in your sleep. You're fighting in your sleep. You're sweating in your sleep. And I think you need some help. So she was never part of my military journey, so she has no clue of some of the things. I just tell them stories, but they don't get it. Yeah. Right? So I go and I get help, and she says, I found this lady named Dr. Judith. And I sit down with Dr. Judith, and she's a holistic type of person in regards to the counseling and the services that she offers. And she taps into my childhood. She taps into the military. And this lady really gets me and sets me on the right path. And this was when I started believing in therapy. I started believing in counseling because of how she connected with me and getting me to truly understand some of the things that I was dealing with. And from there, things are going great and my career is going great. But unfortunately, me and my wife at the time, we decided to get married, and we're now living as a blended family. And at that same time, me and my first wife is going through a child custody battle. So for close over 3 years of my life, I'm flying back and forth from Washington, D.C. to see my son and in a courtroom between that while me and her is together. And it was tough. It was very tough. And throughout that time frame, it was not good. And after 6 months of being married, I just said, I'm just going to file for divorce because I still have issues of things that I'm dealing with. And it's not a good environment for her son, my son, and things that I'm dealing with. And I found myself back again in isolation. And I'm relocated to Tampa, Florida. And I'm there in Tampa, Florida. And I'm working. And at this time, this is when I really, truly kind of lost myself. And I had the identity of some of the things that occurred to me in my childhood, which kind of made me lose my value, my worth. And the kid that was supposed to play football identified with the football player, and I lost that. The kid that served in the military, Marine, the uniform, and I lost that. I got this job on the railroad doing good. I lost that. And I'm married twice, divorced twice, bad dad, bad husband, lost that. And I got my weapon that night, tied 50 pounds of weight to my legs, and went to that bridge in Tampa, Florida, and I tried to take my life. And that was it. I thought that was it for me. And immediately, that same night, I wrote that letter of me ending my life. And the same letter that I wrote my mom in boot camp came to the forethought of my mind of not giving up, not quitting. There's something inside of you to keep pushing and keep going on. And that's when I decided to change my life. And I've never looked back ever since, why I'm here now today. I went to Rush University and I said, you know what? Rush University has this thing around PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and I want to sit down with the doctors. I want to learn all about your brain, learn all about mental health. And I sat there with all of these doctors, all of these counselors, and really let's dissect Michael and fix Michael. And we went through that entire process. And I said, I want to do this again. So I went to Atlanta back again, and they had this program at Emory Hospital. And they were teaching me about prolonged exposure of the type of things that you keep telling yourself over and over and selling yourself. So I went through this entire process of understanding that because this was a part of me that was tied to the grief and the guilt of thinking things was my fault. So we had to really break that down and get that thought out of my mind. And we worked through that entire process. And then shortly after that, I wanted to change because I'm someone that's kind of stays to myself. So I've always been in isolation. And how can I get out of that, engage, and how can I sustain that? So I found myself in a men's group called the Freedom Group. And I was around these guys and I started sharing my story with these guys and they started sharing their stories with me. And when the point of freedom is to set yourself free and have freedom of all of the things that's been holding you back, that you've been bottling in. And it was a 12-week program and I did the program twice. So wow. I wanted to really dig into this and fix some things that I was dealing with. And then I wanted to become a dad again. I wanted to become a husband again. So me and my wife now, which was my ex-wife, we went through counseling for 3 years. So the same woman that I divorced in DC, we went through counseling for close to 3.5 years, and we got married 3 years ago.
Wow. That's amazing.
And that's the path that I've been on, man. And in addition to that, we also had worked with Franklin Graham, Billy Graham's son. And he had worked with us through counseling, and he helped change our lives too as well. Mm-hmm. And from there, that's how my life has set ablaze. I bought a construction company somewhere in between that. And for me, I'm a person of faith. And I was like, God, is this what you want me to do? And he was like, no, this is not it. And I sold the franchise. And I said, I'm going to share my life story. And the reason why I did that, because I went to Texas and I met with my friend Steve Belber. And he was like, Michael, you have such a powerful story and you just wrote your story on 3 pages. There's much more to your life than this. So I work with him. But it was not until I was in a moment to be vulnerable and transparent to share my life, I was able to tell my life story. But it was in freedom where guys was like, man, you've changed my life just from you sharing your own personal story. And from there, I said, all right, what is it that you want me to do? And from there, I finished my book. I put the book out. I got asked to do a TED Talk. Then companies asked me to come in and speak to their teams, to their employees. And I was like, oh, wow, my story is truly making an impact in people's lives. And from there, that's when I said, you know what? Let me figure out this speaking business, this coaching business, this consulting business, and how to get on podcasts and speak here and tell my story with you.
Amazing. So did you start the Adversity Academy?
I did.
Okay. So that is what was born out of all of that.
My life was filled with adversities.
It certainly was. Yes. Yes. That is a true statement. I love your whole story, but vulnerability, what does that mean to you in terms of how, once you tapped into it, how did your life change? And why is it important to show up in vulnerability?
There was so much power in vulnerability. Inside of our head, we keep telling ourselves these stories that we're going to be judged, ridiculed, and there's so many things that's tied to that. But vulnerability and transparency is like a healing process and a healing mechanism for you. And when you realize that this is something that's beneficial to you, you tap into that. And I just started tapping more into that. That's why I started deep diving. And I realized, like, this is my healing journey. This is my healing path that's going to get me towards my destination of what I want to do and accomplish in life. And as I kept going at it, I was like, oh, I'm getting better. Oh, I'm getting better at this. Oh, my life is changing. This is changing all of the roadblocks that I was having for myself. So being vulnerable and transparent was a gift.
Yeah.
It was a gift for me. And also a gift for me to deliver to other people too, because me expressing myself and sharing my life story has impacted in so many other people's lives. I've never thought that me telling my life story, so many people would come up to me and was like, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
You've unlocked something. You know what? My husband is a veteran and he's going through this. They need to get your book. They need to listen to you. They need to talk to you. They need to book a coaching call with you because they need to see someone that has been through some of the things that you've been through, especially either a veteran or someone that's an African American or somebody that's from the Caribbeans or that type of thing. Because some of the things that I share with you and talk to you today, some men won't talk about it. Some people won't express it. They'll just bottle those things in. So if I'm going to be an example to be vulnerable and transparent, then that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I love it. I think vulnerability is so powerful. And just like anything, though, I think people misuse it or misrepresent it. I think, that sometimes there are people or places or, areas where vulnerability is used as kind of used inauthentically or ingenuously. But I do believe that there is fruit when you show up authentically, right? And so you have seen the fruit of that. Others can see the fruit in that as well. Your life has changed. You're changing other lives around you. And I think that it's just such profound proof that these tools that we all have within us are so incredibly important into making connection and showing up for each other, but also for being successful.
I agree with you. So when you say vulnerability, another thing is when people are looking at you from a certain standpoint, I think everyone wants connection. I think everyone wants to be a part of something. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to engage. And it's who's willing to take that first step. And I'm just here to be the one to say I'm willing to take that first step, to let you know that I'm human, to let you know that I'm authentic. And being able to raise my hand and do that is the first step that I've seen to help people get past certain things, because unfortunately sometimes people don't believe some things can occur unless they see somebody else do it. And knowing that I have that opportunity, it would be disingenuous for me not to do that, knowing where I've come from, knowing my experiences, and I would feel that I would be at a disservice to do that to anyone. So that's why, you know, I genuinely love what I do. I love when I get on stage and I tell people my stories, and I could see people either crying, I could see people, because to me, that's like a breakthrough for them. I could see people writing notes down. I know that's a breakthrough for them. Like, so that's the beauty of vulnerability for me.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I think, not to plug my own stuff here, but there is an inherent value in storytelling, and in, you know, storytelling, I believe genuine storytelling requires vulnerability on some level, whether it's fiction or not. And so I think that stories are something that separate us as human beings, right? They are things that, what's that?
It makes you unique.
Yeah. It makes us unique. And, you know, it connects us in really interesting and profound ways. People that you never would meet or talk to, you may identify with because of their story or because of a story. So I think that what you're doing has such inherent value because it is based in this thing that just connects us as human beings. So genuinely and at such a foundational level.
Absolutely, I agree.
So the Adversity Academy, if one were to want to find out what that is, what would you, how I know you work with companies. Do you work with individuals?
Yes, I do work with individuals. So I offer coaching services for anyone that needs to go through that with me. So we offer it in one-on-one coaching, and we also have it in group coaching too as well. And those are offered in 12-week sessions and 6-week sessions too as well. And we actually go through a curriculum, go through a program to get you through your breakthrough. And I apply it through the keynote, but obviously if you get with me on a one-on-one basis, then we dive deeper into it. And I teach the programs and the curriculums through a framework of 3Ds: decision, direction, and destination. And then we kind of break that down a little bit more as we go through that. But that's what I actually talk about with people on stage as well in regards to the keynote, and go through my story and how we could apply it to your life too as well to find your breakthrough.
I love it. Have you found that, well, let me back up. I will say that as a woman, I am always so happy when men are stepping out in their vulnerability and telling their stories and being honest about the ups and downs of life and how, you know, trying to erase or at least affect the stigma that exists. So have you found that doing this yourself has opened a pathway for men to come forward to actually have those conversations?
1,000%. When I first started sharing my life story, it was in the Freedom Group, and the group was about 20 to 25 men. And the first time I did the program, I didn't do it. I did it because I was obviously searching for something and trying to seek my breakthrough. But to be honest with you, when I did it, I was not all in, and I didn't participate fully. And I realized you get what you put in. And I didn't get as much out of the program. So I said to myself, if you really want to have breakthrough, if you really want to have change, you have to participate. And I say this, you got to participate in your own rescue.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, I'm going to go all in, I'm going to play. And I went the second time. And when I went the second time, I was the first one to speak, first one to raise my hand, first one to ask questions, the first one to ask for prayer as I went through this entire process. And as I did that, guys started coming up to me, was like, yo, bro, I appreciate you talking about that or saying that. Like, I deal with that stuff with my kids. I deal with that with my wife. Oh, this happened to me as a kid. I didn't have the same experiences as you, but this is how I feel. And that's when I realized there's power in your words. There's power with your story. And honestly, after I did that, the church came back to me and says, hey, Michael, would you want to be a freedom leader? And I became a freedom leader. And now I teach the freedom courses at my church.
Awesome.
From that experience. But I say that as from there, I did the TED Talk. And after the TED Talk, there's a group of like close to over 10, 20 people around me waiting to talk to me. There's people up there wanting to take pictures with me. From that, I just fast forward. I've been speaking now for well over five and a half years or something. But I just did a keynote in Kansas City to over 5,000 people. And from there, like the line of people there's a young lady, oh my God. She came up to me and she just like hugged me and just started crying and just started crying. And I was like, oh my God. I didn't know that. She was like, I know your story now. And to me, I knew that something must have happened to her for me to share my story. She just came up, started bawling, like bawling. 2 days before that, I'm in Harrisburg, PA, and I'm sharing my story. And quite a few people came up to me. But this lady comes up, Elizabeth, and she said, it's United Way nonprofit. So she said, I work with people that have gone through some of the things that you've been through. And she was like, you're the best speaker I've heard in 17 years.
Wow.
And when she told me that, she said, I've gone to conferences, I've gone to summits, da 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 da. She was like, you're the best speaker I've heard in 17 years that knows how to connect with an audience and connect your story and make sure that it makes sense. They invited me to come back for 2026 to speak at their regional conference.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, this is how you know when you
This is how I know.
Yeah, your
Exactly.
calling for sure.
Exactly.
So looking towards or going back to the veterans aspect of it, would you see any difference in terms of veterans accessing care for their mental health? And if not, what are the barriers to access there?
I think that the process could get better. I've seen some improvement, but I'll be honest with you, I think it could be better. I think mostly all of the military branches' main concerns is the mission and why you're there. Your transition is not top priority to the branch of service. As great as the branches of service are, whenever I work with companies, I say this as like the military is one of the best structured business that you could ever see. If you think about it, it could cycle through hundreds of people and the business still goes on. And if you ever look at it from a business standpoint, I came in, I served, but there's another person behind me that's going to get on those tracks, that's going to go shoot those guns, that's going to do all these things right behind you. So regardless of the process of you going through it, you get what you could while you're serving. But when you transition, there's a gap there that could be filled. So that's why you see organizations and nonprofits are trying to fill those gaps, because they know that veterans are getting out with mental health issues. They're coming out homeless. They're committing suicide, you name it, all of these different things. And why is that? Because there is a gap, especially for people like myself. So one of the things that we struggle with is the purpose, the identity, some of these things that we've ingrained in our minds that they've given us for 8 years, 20 years. And when you get out, the real civilian world, quite frankly, don't really care about some of those things that you've that you've accomplished. Doesn't really mean a lot to some people in the civilian world, from my perspective anyways. So yes, the transition period could be where the military actually partner with companies and organizations and catches some of those things that veterans are dealing with to make sure that transition is much more smoother, whether it's employment, mental health services, whether it's the education aspect of like how to get a home, some of the potential gaps in some of the things that could actually distract you and derail you once you transition. And I think that's some of the areas where if it was maybe streamlined across the board, I think would be quite beneficial, which is why I think it's imperative where if that's not going to be in place, where there's an opportunity for companies to actually come in there and help our veterans in that particular space.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's almost like the military doesn't care once you're not in the military anymore, and civilians don't care because they never had that experience in the military.
Right.
So it really is like a class unto itself.
It's a disconnect, because if I could tell you my military stories and things like as you're hearing my story, but if you've never sat in a tank at 120 degrees, if you've never felt bullets whizzing by your ears and things like that, it's just my story and your experience that you're actually going through and you're hearing. So to the civilian supervisor at Lowe's or Home Depot, if you're going to apply for their job, you could tell them your story and all these things.
Yeah.
But they may have a level of empathy for you, may understand that you served our country, they may tell you thank you for your service. But if they don't know some of the things that you're dealing with, and quite honestly, you know, a veteran is not going to come out and be as vulnerable and transparent of his experiences and life experiences that he's dealt with immediately to get a job or any of those things throughout that transition period. So kind of like you left on your own trying to figure some things out.
Yeah. Yeah, truly. And like your experience with the train. And,
Right.
you know, actually trying to take some time to help yourself and immediately getting laid off. I'm still angry about it. So. I feel like I could ask you 1,000 more questions, but I want to respect your time here. And I do want to ask you the one question that I ask everybody at the end of each episode, which is, through the lens of your experience, what does compassion mean to you?
Through the lens of my experience, compassion means to me being able to embrace your experiences and knowing how to translate that to helping other people, knowing that through the lens of other people, there's many people out there hurting, there's many people dealing with so many things, there's many people struggling with things, and you have the opportunity to have some empathy and help them get through whatever circumstances that they're dealing with too as well.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Your lived experience is a teacher. And so if we treat it as such and we learn from it, it has value in then applying that in helping other people.
Yes.
Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you were like, I wish you had asked me about that?
I'll share something with you that I share with clients that I think is very helpful for people. As someone that always talks about breaking the bottle of things that keeps you on the inside, I think if you want to gain clarity and alignment, I think you could apply the 3 Ds for me that I share with people and identify some of the things with your decision making, identify the direction you want to go in your life or your business, then actually choose the destination of where you want to be. That'll help you with alignment and clarity. In addition to that, as you're going through that process, what I've learned that has helped me in life is if you could be difference-led, it'll help get you to where you're trying to go. And I learned that when Marine Corps teaches us a lot of things around motivation, but motivation dies off after a while and it fizzles out. But when you're struggling and you're trying to like figure things and navigate things out, if you could tie a difference or a meaning or an impact to something and being difference-led, it'll help you take action. It'll help you get you out your comfort zone. It'll help you change your life if you could identify what's the difference this is going to make.
Yeah. Yeah. Big time. Well, thank you so much for your time, for your stories, for your vulnerability. It is extremely appreciated, and what you're doing is very admirable and inspiring. And I wish you all of the best as you continue on in that journey. And we will link in the show notes to the Adversity Academy and any socials or anything that you want to share so that people can continue to follow along with your story.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Human Experience. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends and family, share it on social media, and rate and review it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also support the podcast financially by going to my website, thehxpod.com, linked in the show notes, and clicking on Donate. It takes a lot of time and resources to create this podcast, so every little bit helps. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours. So be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and love well.